Dun, 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 dun.
The League of Lofty Lessons, a public servant event. This lesson addresses our prehistory, read by myself, Wendy, our ancient history, read by Roy. Finally, Michael will complete the lesson by reading our modern history. So let it be written, so let it be spewed. A concise history of the world as we see it. Prehistory. In the beginning, there was this sentence, and like the universe, it showed up, God knows why, out of nowhere. A lot of Higgs boson particle stuff happened, then bang! Like the first sentence of this lesson, the universe just showed up. This event made our galaxy and the third rock from the sun, which is a TV show I like. And being the third planet from the sun worked out pretty well for all concerned. Just the right temperature, water was a bonus, and the moon had a lot going for it too. But let's not forget Elon's X marks the spot, planet Mars, which will be in our future history. Enough of that, let's get down to Earth. Until our planet cooled down, we were an ookie-gookie magna mess. Bet you didn't know 2 billion years ago, the first microorganisms, called prokaryotes, came out of nowhere, yet again, just like the first sentence of this lesson. 300 million years later, our micro-ancestor, eukaryote, showed up, as usual, late for dinner. A lot of really gross eukaryote creepy crawly porn took place, which made plants, fungi, protozoa, animals, and Cthulhu. Over time, more complex life evolved into dinosaurs and the soon-to-be sushi. Critters got really big because life didn't know any better. Things were going just fine until a big rock hit us known as an extinction event, which no one explained to the cockroaches. Yada, yada, yada. A pre-human miraculously goes full Darwin in Kenya 2 million years ago. This was our great-grandpa times 100,000, H. habilis, who was the first tool maker. The folks who first found these bones called dibs on the nickname, so they stuck him with the handyman. Really? This means that H. habilis males were the first humans to get a honeydew list. Remember, H. habilis was around in primordial time. There were no dentists or baseboard heating. Fire, sharp rocks, and pointed sticks were the high tech of the day. Chemistry was putting meat on the fire. Math was mine plus mine equals mine. This was also when metaphysics came about, known as the magical and supernatural juju. H. habilis was aware of cause and effect, as well as an effect caused by bad juju. Earthquakes were due to bad juju. Sickness was due to bad juju. Even today, we know candy stuck between one's teeth is due to bad juju bees. It is said modern man, or Homo sapiens, which means cisgender, showed up around 100,000 years ago in South Africa. In this period, graffiti was spawned, giving primitive man the new hobby of tagging cave walls with the first instruction manual on hunting. These amazing petroglyphs, some over 60,000 years old, show figures holding pointy things so to make animal pincushions. Other petroglyphs, like hands and gatherings, are early proof of kindergarten and the birth of accounting. It appears most Homo sapiens did not stay put due to a serious case of wanderlust. They traveled by land and sea in all directions. On their travels, Homo sapiens bumped into Neanderthals, who were way sexy, very chill, and they knew their way around the neighborhood. Bada bing! Everyone got along so well they mated with each other. This made new groups of Homo sapiens called races. Ever since then, human beings have been racing with each other. This brought us to the end of prehistory and kick-started ancient history, which is all about being first and stretch goals. That's your cue, Roy. Take it away.
Thank you, Misinformation. Ancient history. BC or BCE? That is the question? BCE stands for Before Common Era. BCE is a PC term first used in the 17th century by a generation of whiners that wanted a more inclusive term, even though timelines remained based on Jesus' birth. So we're going with BC because, wait for it, I said so. After the Ice Age, ancient history starts between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers about 3700 BC. Eat that, BCE. In Mesopotamia, commonly known as the cradle of civilization. But that's not true. The cradle of civilization actually began in 1976 when the first Apple I computer was released. Back to Mesopotamia, who made some okay stuff like brewing beer, cities, irrigation, writing, ziggurats, and most agree that Hammurabi's code was a real game changer. Then the Egyptians took over. The reason was their kings and queens were seen as gods because some years earlier, outer space aliens built, right next door to them, a sphinx and a bunch of pyramids, which are way cooler than those dumb ziggurats. Everything was going well in Egypt until they were plagued by a Jewish activist named Moses. After Passover 1.0, Moses escaped with all of Egypt's low-cost labor force. To make things worse, the real estate market tanked due to the blood on all the doors of the abandoned hovels. 40 years later, the Jews pitched their tents between some very unwelcoming Arabs and Egypt because they were waiting for Moses to catch up. Let's talk about Asia. India, around 3300 BC, started to percolate. That's what you smell when you get off the plane. Kudos to India for writing a book on sexual positions, which you can read if your karma suits you. China followed in 2070 BC. They spent a lot of time getting ready for Marco Polo and just looking good. They did build a big wall to keep the riffraff out. This inspired France thousands of years later to also build a wall called the Maginot Line. Both walls worked equally well. Japan in 300 AD was the new kid on the block and decided to be the first to make poetry, whose first line has 5 syllables, followed by a second line of 7 syllables, and ending in a 5-syllable line. This is known as haiku, which is often written by someone who is about to die and they had a little time on their hands. Here's an example of haiku. Japanese haiku is poetry that does sound like a kung fu flick. Japan is such a silly place. Let's jump to the Americas. Around 3500 BC, the Carol Soup civilization, forerunner of Campbell soups, showed up in Peru and built future settings for South American tourism. Aztec, Inca, and Mayan civilizations also added their own tourist attractions, like mass murders, until about 1500 AD, when the Spanish conquistadors showed up at their first sightseer. Up north, the Cahokia were very motivated and made mountains of molehills near St. Louis. Archaeologists, without any flair, called them mounds. Not to be confused with the delicious coconut candy. The Cahokia made 80 mounds covering 3.5 miles, which at its zenith supported 15 to 20,000 people. But, unlike the Egyptians, they did this without any outer space aliens' help.
Oh, nice.
From then on, a lot of stuff happened around the world. We had wars, inventions, religious leaders, industry, etc., even porn. None of which excites me, so let's proceed to the modern age before some of our listeners start nodding off. Take it away, Michael.
Contemporary history. Our most recent history has 3 parts: an early era, followed by a modern era, ending in a contemporary era, also known as nowish. Which to pick? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Pick an era you should know. If it's modern, let us know. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, early, modern, current, go. Eeny. The early modern period is from 1450 to 1750. This really worked out for North and South America, which Europeans lovingly called the New World. As anything brandy new, like the frenzied rabble who must have the newest iPhone, everyone in Europe grabbed for the New World. Thank God the Roman Catholic Church was willing to lend a hand. China and India were playing 3D chess. Also, at that time, everyone was sailing trade ships so pirates could make a living out of them. In the end, the entire world was divided up, mostly by European countries civilizing the world. This was Europe's "we just discovered" period, which was often not appreciated by the people who had lived in those locations for centuries. With all this discovering, Europe could now afford to have a renaissance, which a lot of people thought was nifty. Not because it was in Europe, they liked it because it kept the Europeans focusing on their naval instead of their navy. Meaning, the modern era from 1750 to 1945. There's a lot of American, British, Chinese, German, Japanese, Russian flexing going on in this era. North America was divided by surveyors and generals. Communists had their share of revolutionary moments. Throughout the world, the idea of royalty being in command was being replaced by a far less efficient form of government. So a bunch of Elton John looking dudes in the City of Brotherly Love in 1776 said, "When it comes to government, it's all Greek to me." And like that, democracy was born. In 1789, the French had a Napoleonic complex and went on a head-chopping spree, which pretty much ended at the Battle of Waterloo. In the 1860s, the USA decided to have a civil war, which was anything but civil. For the rest of the 1800s, folks were busy making trains, electricity, cameras, Eiffel Towers, memorabilia. Also, for most Europeans, slavery was no longer seen as a hedge for inflation. Also, for most Europeans, okay, there you go. I almost said the same line twice. Wow, that's just like history. By 1970, we got flight, Ford automobiles, plastic, radio, and silent movies. These were just in time for World War I. Even in 1917, people knew this was the first of many world wars to come. But the PR people knew calling it the war to end all wars would be a much better sell. The first television sets, manufactured by Telefunken, went on sale in 1934. After waiting 2 years to use their Telefunken TV, in 1936, the BBC TV service began. World War II was from 1939 to 1945, which proved World War I wasn't the war to end all wars. As a matter of fact, we had gotten better at it. When World War II was just about to end, so did the modern era. Makes you think. Miney. Contemporary history is from 1945 to the present. Finally, we get to the second half of the 20th century. This is when I was born, so it has a sentimental value for me. The contemporary era starts with a bang, called Fat Man and Little Boy. Our greatest military minds tell us the Allies won World War II mostly because they cashed in 3 troop cards and put all those troops in Normandy, France. England wanted them in Australia, which is a really popular strategy in the game of Risk. Okay, there was this Cold War. Okay, but let me first tell you about the 1960s, where technology and medicine were on steroids. This new tech allowed us to transplant hearts, livers, kidneys, bank accounts, Japanese transistor radios that led to digital game systems and home computers and robot girlfriends. And then it finally reached a point where the Cold War ended because Russia was bad, very, very bad. Okay? Finally, as predicted, AI finally arrived. Hello, Dave. So endeth the lesson. We leave you now in the present because there ain't No mo.
And remember, it's all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of some serious happiness. So like us, love us, and please join us again.
And as Joe Biden would say, end of show.